Penny, penny, penny. What's going on?
Not much. What's up, Wolf? Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. I'm excited, dude. Finally back on for the Tesla space. What's it been like 3 weeks?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. It feels like we haven't done this space in a long time. This is one of my favorite spaces every week, so I'm definitely excited to get back onto it.
Yeah, me as well. It has been 3 weeks. I was in Malaysia 2 weeks ago on the 6th, and then I was flying back from the Philippines. I landed like right before after 30 hours of travel for last week, so that would have been a little bit tough. It was crazy, man. I think you're familiar with, how REM sleep is when you actually recover. I got 20 minutes of REM in 50 hours. So it was definitely, I don't know if I would have been so good for that space right there. I was kind of bumbling my words at that point. But certainly a lot's been going on right now. Tesla, has rebounded like the rest of the stock market when you're just looking at the stock real quick. It's had a great week. Tesla stock is up 12.85% in the past week. It's still not back to green on the year yet. It did have that pop up that we all saw when it went into the 260s. It's sitting down about 10.8% on the year, but certainly nice to see it recovering after kind of dropping off that past month. Not sure if anyone else sniped any under 200. I know Omar was buying and posting about it underneath $200 a share, which was always exciting to see when people do get a good entry like that. And there's been more updates, of course, going on with the networks. I don't know if you saw this. One of my favorite things that I've seen from Tesla over the last, I would say, few weeks is, well, it's actually not from Tesla. This was posted by Sawyer, and he posted a like wide body kit that people can get on the Model 3 now on the Tesla Model 3. Did you see what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't seen anything like that. Do you know who made it?
Yes, yes. I gotta find this post. I actually sent it to a friend of mine. It's like a $7,000 wide body kit for the Tesla Model 3, and it's made by Liberty Walk. Um, oh, sorry, I accidentally muted Omar. I meant to send him co-host. And so let me see if I can find this real quick. This was from Sawyer, and I'm just gonna post it just because it was one of my favorite things that I saw about Tesla in the last little bit. I thought it looked absolutely sick, and I feel like if I got a Tesla and then I put this onto it, it would just look crazy. I just pinned it to the top of the space for any of those that want to take a look at it and get a look. Hey, Landon, I see you in the audience if you want to go ahead and request up. But yeah, do you see that, Penny?
It's not in the jumbotron yet. As soon as it comes up, I'll take a look. But I think that in the coming years, Tesla custom shops, things like body kits like this, they're going to be so popular because, Tesla's really working on printing the most efficient manufacturing lines that they can, and that means not necessarily so many options, not so many different body styles and things like that. They have a lot fewer models than a lot of the other car companies. So I think things like this wide body kit and other customizations are going to be increasingly popular in the future. I hope the company does really well.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I DM'd it to you as well in case it's not showing up top, just because I thought it looked absolutely
Oh, that's
sick.
so sporty. I see it now in the Jumbotron. Yeah, that is cool. 8,000's not cheap, but for a full body kit, make yours look different than anyone else's. Yeah, I think that's really sick.
I like it. I like it. I feel like you race around in one of those babies. It'll look fun. But yeah, outside of that, I know that there's been plenty always going on. There was some discussion, a lot of discussion around Elon, of course. He did a space with Trump. They talked about EVs a little bit, I believe, on that space as well. There was breaking news this morning or last night from Sawyer that I saw as well that Tesla China said that construction of their new Shanghai Megapack factory is now 45% complete after just 3 months of construction, which is wild. So they're projecting to finish that, I guess, near end of year, maybe early next year. So that's pretty close to coming out here. And yeah, there's just been a lot going on. But I will turn it over to Omar real quick because Omar, we've had 3 weeks off from the space, the longest I think we've ever gone. So I feel like there's a good amount that's happened, and I'd love for you to catch us up.
Yeah, there definitely has been a lot happening. Hard to catch up on everything, but we've been seeing pretty incredible progress in both EVs and autonomous cars. So, for Tesla, things seem to be improving in the core auto business. We got some China numbers last night along with an update on the Megapack factory. And Tesla's doing very well in China. They're the number 2 brand for EVs behind BYD, which sells hybrids and EVs. So very strong numbers there from China. Very impressive. Some of the financing deals seem to be having an impact. In the United States, we're going to see rates come down a little bit. And we did get some of the sales numbers for June. In particular, the Cybertruck seems to be having a really strong showing. About 5,000, just under 5,000, actually 4,600 Cybertrucks were registered in June. That was a pretty significant number. It actually now is outselling both the Rivian R1S and the R1T combined. So last time we had the space, we maybe talked about the fact that it was outselling the R1T. Now the Cybertruck alone is bigger in volume than Rivian's entire business. So it just speaks to the scale of this company. Rivian, of course, introduced the R1T about 3 years ago. And Rivian sales and others EV sales are actually growing as well. And if not for the Cybertruck, the US EV industry would have actually been down a little bit year over year. The Cybertruck and other new models, but the Cybertruck alone pushed it to year over year growth. Meanwhile, on the FSD front, we're seeing FSD continue to roll out very slowly. More people got it last night, people who got new cars. Unfortunately, we still don't have it for Hardware 3, which is disappointing, as most people have Hardware 3. But for the people who do have it, the comments I've been seeing have been pretty positive. I'm about to post a video right after this space of Tesla FSD 12513, the latest version, doing about an hour of rideshare driving in Los Angeles, real rideshare rides. And it handled pretty much every ride. I had to take over once to reverse and turn around in a McDonald's parking lot. Other than that, this thing is pretty good at being an Uber driver today. Not 100% there, of course, but they're making rapid progress, which is super encouraging. And then Waymo, the leading driverless service in the world, and certainly in the United States, has also had some exciting announcements this week. Waymo introduced their new 6th generation driver. It has a new sensor suite, and it's actually not going to have a steering wheel or pedals. It's just going to be, completely blank up front. So this is pretty interesting. Waymo recently opened their service up in San Francisco. They've gone from doing 50,000 rides a week, or about 2.6 million rides a year, to now they just announced today, just before the space, 100,000 rides per week. So that's 5.2 million driverless rides a year. Still a drop in the bucket relative to global ride sharing, but a rapid expansion. In May of 2023, Waymo was doing 10,000 rides a week. Now they're doing 100,000 rides a week. So 10x larger in just about a little over a year. So really incredible progress by EVs, incredible progress in autonomy. I don't think most people realize that 5.2 million driverless rides are happening a year. So it's a pretty exciting time for autonomous electric vehicles. Another announcement that we saw today was that, the EU is putting tariffs on Chinese imported EVs. There was some concern that this could affect Tesla and the Model 3. Tesla does make the Model Y in Germany, so that wouldn't have a tariff, obviously. But for the cars they import from China, specifically the Model 3, there was some concern about how that could impact Model 3 prices. And the EU is setting different subsidy levels based on the level of state assistance. They thought Tesla was going to be at about 21%. Today they said for Tesla, because they're not really getting much state assistance from the Chinese government compared to companies like BYD, they're going to have a tariff of just 9%. So less than half of what was expected. And that should make the Model 3 a little more affordable in Europe.
Really nice start off the top there, Omar. I feel like, like you said, there's a lot of material, but you did a good job catching us up over a lot of what's happening the last 2 weeks, especially with the Waymo items and some of those pieces. Real quick, before I go over to other people on the panel, there's obviously been a lot of talk about Elon, working in the government now. How do you think all this stuff affects Tesla?
Um, I I mean, have to see how the election turns out. Um, for me, I think it is probably taking up a lot of the conversation share because it's so dramatic. Elon being a huge sort of left wing hero for many years for starting Tesla, bringing EVs to the mass market, and now having this fight with the Democrats and endorsing Trump and getting friendly with Trump. It's certainly very controversial. People have a lot of emotions and feelings about it. But, ultimately, I think Tesla's going to be fine, whether it's, Democratic or Republican administration. And probably what's happening with autonomy and electrification is more significant, but less interesting to talk about.
Yep, that's pretty fair as well. Penny, do you got any initial comments before I go over to Landon and Kristen?
As far as the Trump Elon connection goes, I actually think that has more of an impact right now as we're going through, the transition, like Omar mentioned, of from left-wing hero to left-wing villain, at least from the perceptions of those maybe on the far left. I think there's a lot of people right now who are not associating themselves, not buying a Tesla intentionally. I think that it's as hot as it's going to get because it's election season. I think when the election season ends, people aren't spending so much time thinking about politics. He's not out there endorsing, what a lot of people consider to be, a dictator, or a fascist, or whatever. Personally, I'm happy that Elon is endorsing Trump, but there's a lot of people who aren't. So my feeling is that it'll probably, not make that big of a difference one way or another for Tesla in the long run, and that it'll fade once the political season fades. But I do hope that if he does the government efficiency, that it's good for America, right? I mean, I don't know about Tesla, but I think we're pretty bloated here in the States, and we could use all the help we can get. If anyone knows how to clean up the government and make it more efficient, it's Elon. I'm all for it.
That's fair. All right, Landon, what have you been looking at when it comes to Tesla? Nice Tesla hat.
I wake up today and I'm so excited for so many Tesla reasons. And it's easy to be a Tesla bull, even in this valley that we are in between major product ramps, as Elon and the team said. It's still exciting because overnight I get 12.5 on my newest Tesla. And I go out and drive it today, and the things that I felt that 12.3 and 12.4 were still on my punch list, so to speak, were gone. And so when that happens, I know it's not, whatever you want to say 100% yet, but when that happens, it just changes your focus and you say, I do believe this is happening. My faith is really in something that is going to change humanity. It's going to save lives. And it's just cool to have your Starlink Mini in your Tesla and be driven around by this amazing computer that's using pure vision, it's using cameras. I've even started to notice on other cars, even luxury cars, that have these little cutouts in the bumpers. They've got like 8 cutouts in the front bumper and in the back bumper. And it's just tacky now because Tesla's gone beyond that with technology and it makes our cars more beautiful. So I'm glad we're back here. I would like to hear more about your Malaysia when you get a chance. That's a hell of a trip. But it's really exciting to be in the Tesla ecosystem and the Tesla universe and just realize we're still at the foot of the mountain. And here we go up to the top in our lifetimes. We're going to see it. Thanks.
I'm still on 12.43, but when I was dropping off my oldest daughter at cheerleading this morning, it was like 5:30 in the morning. and I got back in my car after dropping her off, and I flipped on FSD, and I had an instinct to like lean my car seat back and take a nap. I was so comfortable with how good it's driving. I'm not joking. Like I would have taken a nap if I could. I'm so shocked with how good it is, and I'm not even on 12.5 yet. It really is amazing the progress they've made this year.
I did
Yeah,
like
I work.
12.4. I've got all of them. I got 12.3 on a car, 12.4 on a car, and 12.5. 12.4, I think, is an unsung hero, and it's important to mention 12.4 is not 12.5, but it's great, great, great for me, and it's on hardware 3 cars. So that's the answer to me.
When it comes to technology, no one is doing it better than Tesla. No one has better clean written code. I work in technology and Tesla is one of our customers. And when it comes to technology, I mean, they write the safest technology out there. There's no comparison. We're working directly with HubSpot to develop CRMs.
Did you get cut off for anyone else?
Yes.
All right. Thought it wasn't only me. Okay, I'll wait for him to come back in for a second. And also, real quick, Landon, on Malaysia. So I flew out to Malaysia because I was cast as the host of a TV show. It is similar to Shark Tank, but for crypto companies. There are a couple of hosts playing different roles across the show, but there's also like sharks. They're called knights on this show. It was truly an epic experience, but probably the hardest I've ever worked in a 4-day period. They had us recording about 14 to 16 hours a day. I had 3 cameras on me, full face of makeup, and all these lovely things for pretty much all day, every day for about 4 days in a row. It was a pretty cool experience, though. I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm excited. And the show will be out in November, and it should be on Amazon Prime. So everybody, go and watch it then. But yeah, I spent some time. I also was there a couple days earlier to meet people and get to know some of the cast, and then I flew over to the Philippines right afterwards because I have 3 team members that work for Wolf that live in the Philippines. And I figured if I'm already in Asia, why not meet them? And it was also my birthday last Sunday. So I went over to the Philippines and I got myself an Airbnb. I got them an Airbnb. People in the Philippines live very different lives than we live here. They live in a province in the Philippines. They'd never even been to the main city. It was their first time having a place that had air conditioning in its living room. It was just a very cool experience to be able to have with them. They had never had a lot of fun experiences. I took them bowling. We went laser tagging. We had sushi. These were all first time experiences for them, which was really really fun. So spent my days out there. Walked about 30,000 steps in 2 days. Sweated my butt off because I don't know if you've ever felt Filipino humidity, but it's built different. And then returned back on a 30-hour trip to the U.S. So that was pretty much my 2 weeks there.
Just killed it. Congratulations. Happy birthday. That's a great story in so many different ways. Good for you. We all love being in your spaces and you are killing it. Good job.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was super excited to be able to do it. My travel does not stop. I landed, and 24 hours later, I got on another flight, flew out here. I'm in Chicago now. I'm here for another week, and I'll be back and forth between East Coast, West Coast, each of the next 4 weeks, pretty much. So I'll be flying over to Huntington Beach area, and then I'll be in Vegas and all over the place. So it should be a good time. But I was very excited to be able to get back into the spaces with y'all. Love hearing from y'all. One of my favorite spaces that we do here each week, and excited to be able to be back and doing it regularly now. Okay, there's a few folks on stage we haven't heard from. Kristen, you want to jump into the mix here, share some thoughts on what you've been looking at?
Yeah, happy belated birthday, Wolf, and I hope you get more REM sleep after all that. That sounds like a cool experience. And I concur with Landon. This is such a professional but still fun space. It's excellent. Um, I was just gonna go over some of the things since we've been since we've been out for 3 weeks. Tesla is looking for a task force engineer with their 25 Guns group. I think it's that Giga Berlin 25 Guns, the task force that's in charge of the big critical pathways for projects. It's super exciting to see who's gonna fill that. I think it's cool that Elon puts together these teams and he has groups that work so efficiently in engineering. I mean, as we know, Tesla hires the best out there. What are the statistics? It's harder to get into one of Elon's companies than it is to get into an Ivy League school. That's just the kind of engineers they hire. Um, I think people saw that Tesla put out that cooler for the Cybertruck. It's $700. That was really interesting. There was a lot of people interested in it. Some people may be wondering why it didn't like plug in. Some people are like, I want it to keep cool. So I don't know if anyone here got that, and it'd be cool to see what they think of it. As well as Tesla's diner was hiring. I think the ones that you guys see in Santa Monica, the diner, the one that they're building out right now is hiring right now. They put out looking for someone with diner experience, a specialist. And I think the position of the pay was anywhere from like 84,000 to 285,000, which is really nice. It's going to be cool. I look forward to going to that diner and seeing how it is. And Bucky's in Texas is putting together a V4 charging station. So that'll be cool to see. I don't know if you guys, anyone here has tried the V4 chargers. So it's cool to see them after the V3 people experience them just to get a quicker charge on the 4680 batteries. Has anyone here tried them? I don't know.
Well, I have, but not with a Cybertruck or not with 4680. So it was just the standard speed for me. But the cables are longer. They can cross over, hit a bunch of different sides of the stall. It was cool.
That is cool. Yeah, I mean, the efficiency, the ability to charge your battery all the way up to 100% and then not have to worry about that is pretty great. Um, Giga Texas, I think people saw that they're gonna, well, it's not Giga Texas, but well, yeah, it is Giga Texas. Sorry about that. The Model 3 rear-wheel drive that will be offered in Mexico, the one with the cloth seats is interesting. I don't know if we, I don't think many people talked a lot about it, but it's gonna have no rear screen. It's going to have no vented seats. It'll only have the white ambient lighting in the interior, and it'll be a little bit of a price reduction. So that'll be interesting to see how well that takes.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think that caught a lot of people by surprise, them sort of offering a pared down Model 3 for Mexico and the South American market. It doesn't look like it's offered in the US now, but I think BYD has actually had a lot of success in Mexico and South America. So it's interesting to see them focusing more on that segment. And I think we're going to hear more from them on 1010 about more affordable vehicle models.
Yeah, I agree, that will be really good, and there was a point, I don't remember what year it was, that there was a talk about cloth seats. I don't know if people remember that it was the standard range, and it didn't last long, but I mean, I think this will last long
Yeah,
because this
back
will
in the
be.
day, the
Yeah,
the $35,000 Model 3 was supposed to have cloth seats. But then when they got there, they said, this is too complicated to make two different versions of the Model 3. We're just going to have the vegan leather on all the cars." But
right,
now it's back.
right,
They
super
they did have
interesting.
cloth in the Model S for a minute. You can find some textile seats in some like 2012s, 13s, 14s. Not not my taste. I don't know what did you guys think about the quality look? Is that something you would want to have here on the menu?
I mean,
I
I
mean,
for one like the wipeable ability of of the non-cloth seats, but it sounds like for Tesla that'll be an affordability thing that helps other people, so.
Shai, good to have you up here on stage as well. Really curious your thoughts here on how Tesla stock has been acting and your thoughts on just things that have been happening around the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, that diner is actually less than a mile away from my place, so I see it all the time in construction. It's cool to drive by on Santa Monica Boulevard. So other than that, I mean, the price action, it's really great to see. Like, there's some worry that it might break 200. If so, then it would kind of potentially retest some bottoms around 170, 60 to 170 level. But we had an immediate V-shaped recovery above 200, and now the bull is giving a bullish sign as well. It feels like it's going to be safe until the 1010 event. I really do think we're gonna get some kind of run up entering that major catalyst. Similar fashion like we're seeing Nvidia right now, getting a couple weeks of a run up until their earnings next week. I do think there's gonna be some anticipation as in that as well for Tesla's 1010 events. And I think 270 is an absolute realistic target for that's what I'm aiming for before that 1010 event. Like I do have a trade in place to capitalize on that. I will love it if it wasn't the Cell News event. It was actually provide a lot of clarity on the robotaxi and all the specific initiatives that FSD is going to entail. But other than that, I mean, Tesla's also really at an interesting point where they feel like they're going to benefit from either candidate winning. And I don't know if it's a game of like Elon playing chess and put himself in a position where it doesn't really matter. But either way, like if the I know a lot of people say if like Kamala wins, it's actually gonna be bearish on Tesla because they don't like Elon. But I disagree. I think it's still going to be pushing EV initiatives, which would be a net positive for Tesla, obviously as a market leader. And then Trump is like hyping Elon up a lot, where he's going to have potentially a lot of influence in his candidacy. So like Tesla's in a great spot, in my opinion, on a lot of different growth avenues aligning as a perfect storm of multiple inflections that are almost to the red zone, where they can actually push to the end zone at the same time, which is really great. I do think the rate cut is coming narrative is also a huge boost for Tesla as well, because consumers won't be will be more in line with buying cars, with the affordability becoming more, with the cars becoming more affordable with lower rates. Tesla will obviously be a beneficiary of it. So like I do think the worst is behind Tesla and the fundamentals, like those price reducing the prices, margin deterioration. Like I think that those days are over with, and I'd love to see it. And it feels like it's about to break out this multi-year base it's been in, and that's correlating with a lot of fundamentals finally catching up as well. So like, I do think it's great time to be a Tesla shareholder, and there's gonna be a lot. Like, you felt a lot of FOMO once it broke 200. You felt that excitement that this name has been like lacking a bit if you weren't just an absolute Tesla bull. Like you felt that again. That was like a renewed energy, and I think that's just the beginning of a multi-year rally that Tesla's going to experience with all these technologies that they're going to introduce in the near term.
Definitely want to hear Omar's thoughts on that. But before I do, Jessica, it was really nice meeting you in person and great to see you up on the space now. What's going on? Jessica, see if she's able to unmute. Jessica was sitting next to myself, Samuel, who's up here, and Diligent for the Trump speech that we watched in Nashville back at the Bitcoin conference. They all sat there waiting for like 4 or 5 hours before the speech, and then I just showed up and took the seat that they had saved for me. So thank you, y'all, for getting me some sleep. But we'll see. I'm giving it a minute because I'm not hearing Jessica. Maybe she's having some trouble unmuting. But Omar, did you have some thoughts on what Shai just shared there?
Yeah, I agree. I think Tesla has really been an interest rate loser since rates have gone up. Not only has it impacted their core business, but it's also, just impacted equity markets. I think people don't necessarily, they may like the story, they may like autonomy, but when the core business isn't growing year over year, then it's tough to really look at it and say, okay, this is a great entry point. I think that's starting to change as rates come down. And you look at, for example, some of the revised labor market figures, the labor market's significantly softer than it initially appeared. So I think there's a very good chance of a September cut. You're already seeing the core auto business improve, and I think there's some wind in their sails coming. Q3 2023 was a low quarter due to factory downtime. So Q3 2023 is going to be a year over year beat. That's the first time that's happened for Tesla in 6 months. And I think they're just very well positioned to capitalize on the rise of autonomous electric vehicles. Sometimes a trend happens in the technology world, and it's not really about any one company doing it, but it's just kind of a wind or a rising tide that can lift many boats. And I think Tesla's in a really good position to mass produce millions of driverless vehicles, which is what the world is going to need. Those 100,000 Waymo rides a week we talked about, that's with a fleet of less than 1,000 cars. So to really serve all the world's travel demand, we're going to need to produce millions and millions and millions of these things. And I think Tesla's probably the best equipped company to do it. although Waymo has been a pioneer. General Motors was a pioneer in EVs. They had the EV1, but there's a difference between pioneering a new technology and scaling it to billions of people.
Good point. Seeing if I can get Jessica back up. I see you in the audience. Dropped you a couple of invites. Sam, we've got you on stage as well. I know you're mostly hanging out here, but do you have any questions or thoughts for the panel?
I was just gonna say, it was great meeting Jessica. It was great saving you guys' seats. It's great hearing about Tesla. I'm excited. I've always wanted a Tesla, so that's what my kind of next goal is. But I love hearing about it, and I'm in for the ride.
Very nice. Yeah, Sam, a valuable member of the Wolf Team. Good to have you up here on the space with us. Let me flip a question back over at you, Omar. I feel like I've seen more stuff going on around Cybertruck, but I haven't seen necessarily updated numbers on demand or other items. I know you have your Cybertruck. What have you seen lately that's happening there in regards to sales numbers or other items? Because we are almost done this earnings season, so it seems like we have a little bit of a break here until we'll have to really dig into the data. But I'm just curious what you've been seeing.
Yeah, the Cybertruck is looking like a hit, which is kind of contrary to what we had heard for a long time. People said, "Oh, this thing's so ugly. No one's going to want to buy this." The Ford F-150 Lightning, that looks like a traditional truck. So they're probably going to outsell it. But Tesla is now outselling the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Rivian R1T combined, the next two best-selling electric trucks. So it's now the best-selling electric truck in America, which is, you know, it's like being the tallest little person at the little person convention. Electric trucks don't have very high sales. Really, we want to be talking about uh, gas trucks and really making a dent in gas truck sales. So there's a long way to go, but it is encouraging to see some of those sales numbers. 4,600 Cybertruck registrations in June. I'm sure July and August are going to be even higher than that. And they're still only selling the $100,000 version. So this Foundation series, it's a limited edition version. They're selling it at a higher price, everything kind of included. Later, hopefully, by the end of the year next year, they're going to be producing an $80,000 version and eventually even a $60,000 version. So that, I think, is going to open the door to significantly more sales as those versions come out. Currently, the Cybertruck still doesn't have FSD or autopilot, which is kind of weird for a Tesla vehicle. It's supposed to be coming this month, so that's going to be super exciting. Um, but overall, I think sales are very impressive. We saw someone actually register one in China. I think China could be a huge market for it if they start selling it there officially. This guy just bought it in the United States and had it imported. But they, are making very good progress ramping, I think. Their installed capacity is about 120,000. They're approaching a run rate of 60,000 or more. So they're kind of halfway to using this initial capacity. I think they'll continue to ramp from there. But without the Cybertruck, the US EV industry would have actually fallen year over year. So it's the best selling vehicle over $100,000, gas or electric. So people really like it. I think when you drive it, they're now giving test drives, by the way. You'll see why. The outside is really not what it's about. When you drive it, when you sit inside, when you see the steer by wire, the rear wheel steering, how this thing gives you the utility of a truck, but it still feels like a luxury sports car to drive. I think this thing is going to be super, super popular, especially as they get the lower priced versions out. The other thing that we've seen from Cybertruck that's kind of interesting is they've started making prototype 4680 cells with both the anode and the cathode using the dry electrode coating process. Now, what does this mean? Long story short, it means we can ramp up the battery production faster. It means we can do it at lower cost, with less space, with less energy use. It's a big, big advancement in the battery technology that powers this product and should help it continue to ramp. So, all the haters who said, oh, Cybertruck's ugly, it's going to be a failure, they now have to try and explain why it's the best-selling electric truck and growing. And I think by the end of the year, they have said that they're going to be profitable on the Cybertruck as well. So right now they're losing money on everything they sell, just typical for new vehicles. But by the end of the year, it'll actually be helping them make more money. So the automotive gross margin you saw in Q2, for example, that reflected a headwind from Cybertruck production. Cybertruck is making them less profitable because they're losing money on it. By the end of the year, that situation is going to be reversed. They'll actually be making money the more Cybertrucks they sell.
Some bold predictions, but I'd love to see it come true. Landon, what do you think?
Cybertruck is so exciting for all of those reasons and so many more. What I've watched in the automotive industry for 3 decades is major and minor players come out with prototype vehicles, concept vehicles, and they say, this is the future. This is what our brand can do in the next 10 years. And they lose money on it and they never build them, or they come out with a watered down version that's got 14-inch wheels and tires on it and looks stupid. And Cybertruck is the ultimate halo vehicle for Tesla. And they are not losing money on it. They're actually getting their clients, you know, thousands of people a month at a time to pay over $100,000 for one of the versions, 120,000 for another version. This is success because Tesla has created the it vehicle of the moment, of the decade. Who knows? But you don't find pro NBA players. You don't find rap stars. You don't find reality stars and Hollywood celebrities showing off Lamborghinis this year, do you? They're driving Cybertrucks. And here in the next month or two or so, they are going to be driving around those vehicles full self driving, robo taxi style. Very exciting Cybertruck
Yeah,
news.
Wolf, did you see that video about Shaq ordering a second Cybertruck?
I did.
I
He's
think
like, I don't want to have to
that,
just bring mine from this other place, right?
yeah, I think that kind of says it all. He was like, "Hey, I missed my Cybertruck. I need a second one. I got one in Vegas. I need one in Atlanta too." And I mean, it really is the best vehicle for someone like Shaq, I think.
Certainly in a shack environment, I think it'll be a good fit. I
Like
can
there have
I can
probably been
imagine why he
very
likes it.
few EVs Shaq can even fit in before this.
Yeah, I'm no Shaq, but I can tell you the world is not built for people over 6 feet tall. I will tell you that. Let's go over to Meta 4, who jumped up on stage. Meta, what have you been looking at in the world of Tesla? We talking Cybertruck, Elon, a few other items.
Yeah, Cybertrucks. I've been driving my Cybertruck around, and more the comment I get from people is, I used to think it looked ugly, but the more I see it, they actually are growing on me. And it really, really reminds me for those people who were around. Like, if you drove a Model 3 in the early days, it was the exact same comments. People would say, it looked uglier in photos. It looks nicer in person. People forget this is like the way human brains work. Familiarity makes things look more comforting. And the more you see it, the more familiar you get. There's this concept I remember learning from a friend about like the fashion industry, where like, let's say they wanted people to wear clothes with sharp shoulder pads or something like that. Well, on the runway, they would have insanely exaggerated looks, and people would say, no one would wear this. Then you go to the store and you see something that's a little dialed down, and they go, oh, you know what? This I could get I could get behind this, but not that crazy look on the runway. That's what most other car industries do, right? Like they'll show crazy prototypes and then dial it down. It's kind of a waste of resources. I like Tesla's approach to just be like, look, we'll just get enough out there. People get familiar with it. And that also solves the same problem.
Yeah, there is something kind of beautiful at it. Like I often find myself kind of staring at it. The form is just, so simple. It's so out there that I think there is a certain kind of beauty in that. You may not consider it like this, typical kind of car beauty of, a nice shiny painted car, but there is something very eye-catching about it, and it's definitely something that people just gravitate towards every time you park People are walking up to it, they're asking you about it. Some mom says, "Hey, can my kid take a picture in front of your Cybertruck to send to his friends at school?" So, yeah, I think Franz and the team really kind of knocked it out of the park on this one.
I was walking up to Starbucks yesterday, and one of my friends parked his Cybertruck in front. There was a cute young family walking by, and then they probably had like a 2-year-old son. The 2-year-old son pointed at the Cybertruck and he said, "Mommy, another weird truck." And then like 2, 3 seconds later, he goes, "Mommy, can we get one?" I mean, like people love these things. They are weird, but they're weird in like the most beautiful way.
It's fun to watch Tesla pull us into the future. I watched yesterday a dive into the new Chevy half-ton pickup EV that's now, I think, in limited release. And this is the opposite of the Cybertruck in all of the old school ways. It's this black, shiny paint that looks like it's very fragile and delicate on this full-size work truck. I mean, it's incongruous. Why would you spend so much money on a work vehicle and then have to absolutely baby it anytime you go to Home Depot, where you got this stainless steel and you can see people filling it with bags of pallets of concrete, putting lumber on the top of the thing. They're driving it off road. They're living out in the wilderness. This is not your father's shiny Chevy, kind of garage queen truck.
Yeah, Sam.
I was just gonna have a question for anybody on the panel. I think the Cybertruck came out like end of last year. I could be wrong though. How is it performing compared to some of the other models launches? Like, how is the Cybertruck's launch compared to the other, like sales wise, compared to some of the other models?
Well, the Cybertruck is still production limited, so it's hard to compare a vehicle that's production constrained to vehicles that may not be production constrained, or probably are not
Well,
production constrained at this point.
if you want to look at the $100,000 price range, this is actually now Tesla's most expensive vehicle. So it's more expensive than the Model S and the Model X, but it's now outselling the Model S and the Model X. So, for its price range, it's doing very well. I think to get into much higher volumes, you really want to see the $80,000 version and eventually the $60,000 version. But it's literally the best-selling vehicle above 100K, gas or electric, and it hasn't even fully ramped yet.
And they're still selling the Foundation series, right? Like everybody buying it knows that someday a $20,000 price cut's coming, yet they just don't care. They're still buying it.
And expanding globally into Canada now is taking orders and planning deliveries. I think the Omar's story earlier about the man that imported and processed a Cybertruck into China does not mean that Tesla is going to be selling Cybertrucks in China anytime soon, but it means that there's a man that was willing to pay reportedly over $300,000 for this truck that's about to be $80,000. The demand is out there, it's insane, and I think Tesla is working the program very well.
Yeah, if you want a Cybertruck like that guy in China, there isn't really an alternative. If the Ford F-150 is too expensive, you can go get a Ram. You can go get a Silverado. They're going to be almost exactly the same. If you want a Cybertruck, there's only Cybertruck.
It's crazy too, the amount of people who get a Cybertruck, and on top of the price tag they're already paying, they're going out and wrapping it with all these very cool wraps.
Yeah, I've been surprised by how many wraps there are. I'm seeing a ton around Southern California, and probably almost at least half, if not more, are wrapped. Wrapped black, blue, tan, wrapped with your business's name, wrapped with some kind of design. It's really become this giant canvas for people to express themselves or promote their business. And it kind of naturally attracts eyes, right? People are just naturally looking at it. So I think a lot of businesses have bought it just to, for example, promote their real estate practice or their, plumbing firm or whatever they're using the truck for.
Let me flip it back over to you, Shy, for a second. Looking at it from like the investor perspective, what are you hoping to see over the next few months?
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, right now Tesla is a story stock, and what do I mean by that is like everything that everyone on the panel is bullish on, we're not really seeing that reflected in the fundamentals yet, which I'm totally fine with because I love being kind of there before that occurs because that's when the mass audiences and Wall Street starts catching on and revising their price targets, doing those upgrades. That's going to drive the stock price up and up and up. I'd rather be the first mover there before that occurs. So in the next couple months, like next 6 months, let's just say, like I would love to see some of uh, the FSD revenue occurring so we can like see the margin expansion story or just seeing more volume on Cybertrucks or just more any kind of earning expansion story, margin expansion story that lets the fundamentals kind of catch up to the valuation because right now clearly there's a massive disconnect which I'm totally fine with because my vision for Tesla is way greater than what the fundamentals should be right now. So I could care less. But what to answer your question, fundamentally, what I'm looking for is just closing that gap a bit because right now it is an absolute story stock, and there's a lot of ways that can go wrong due to out of the company's control. Let's just say rates don't even get cut this year, or we hit enter a recession that's way more severe than people anticipate. Like I don't think either of those things will happen, but those are potential headwinds. So those whenever a company is a story stock where their fundamentals don't back up the valuation, like they do get punished the most during those kind of recessionary environments. So that's the only caveat of like, ooh, I would like that to improve. But also, like, I'm not done building my position. I want more. So I could, I kind of want this to not explode to $300. Like I would love it to like settle a bit because I'm still trying to build it up that position. So it wouldn't be the worst thing if the 1010 event wasn't a we didn't get that much detail or visibility of what actually is going to occur next year or so because I'm still building. But to answer your question, I would like that gap to close so the fundamentals finally back up the get closer to what the valuation should be.
So yeah, it definitely makes sense what you're saying, right? You like to see those things continue to get implemented into the actual company, right? A little bit of projection certainly happening right now. I think Omar, you're an interesting place because Penny, others are in the day to day where you're driving the Tesla. You're in kind of the feel of the company. It is a big part of your everyday lives. So there's kind of, I think it's for a lot of investors, right, who don't actually own the product. That's maybe they're more on like where Shy's looking at it versus the people that are driving on a day to day basis that perhaps are more like, hey, we already are there, right? I'm already seeing it do all the driving for me every day. All these things are already happening. I have FSD beta, but it's not necessarily widespread yet. What are the latest updates with FSD beta, with some of the versions that are coming out, Amar?
Well, they've got this new version that is the biggest FSD update ever. It's like an atomic bomb that's about to go off over the fleet in a good way as it rolls out. They've been really being very cautious rolling it out because I think going hands free for the first time, where you don't have to touch the wheel on the city streets and highways, is a big leap for them. So they want to make it really good, and they have. The new model's 5 times larger in terms of its parameter count, and you can really see the difference. It's just a much more lifelike driving experience. So I think going hands free and releasing that, it's not obviously a driverless car, but I think it's going to be material. And a lot of people don't realize how material FSD as an ADAS system actually is today. Goldman estimated last year that in 2023 they did $1 to $3 billion in revenue based on FSD and enhanced autopilot sales. So this is on its own $1 billion business. It did more revenue than ChatGPT last year. So, FSD alone. And then how many people are buying the car because of autopilot and FSD? So I think it's a big part of the business. Obviously, it's peanuts compared to, I think, what the robotaxi is going to be. But a lot of people don't really know about this because they don't break it out. They don't find it to be material enough to break out. I think with the release of hands-free FSD, that's really the two key milestones I'm looking at this company more than anything are the release of hands-free FSD in the United States and the expansion of FSD into international markets like Europe and China. If they can do that, they're going to get a ton of sales and subscriptions from people in those markets who've never been able to try FSD before. And I think their head is going to explode when they see the jump from the 5-year-old autopilot to the latest FSD, which already works in Europe, can handle roundabouts and do drives without any intervention. They've demoed it in Germany for some regulators, and the regulator said, hey, it didn't have any interventions, and it was able to drive through Europe, drive through Germany, go through roundabouts. So that is really, I think, what's in the near term. In terms of launching a driverless service, I think that's probably not going to happen earlier than the end of 2025. Um, but in terms of the ADAS system, I expect the rollout of hands-free to be material, not just to subscriptions and after purchase sales of FSD, but I expect it to also increase new car sales. It's going to be a significant differentiator. So I really agree with Shai. You're not seeing a lot of this in the P&L. It's just not there, right? People are looking at the automotive side of the business. As they roll out hands-free, they start to be able to tell that story. When you can say, "Hey, we saw user growth of 50%, or we saw the number of FSD users double, or we saw revenue double from FSD," then Wall Street starts to be able to model it out. And I'm hopeful that in Q3 and Q4 they can start highlighting this more in their earnings.
Did you see the Tesla Cybervan that people have posted?
Yeah. And there's a lot of speculation because they've been saying we're going to bring some new vehicle models to market. So everybody wants to know, what are these new models? And they had this little picture they showed at one point where they had a couple vehicles under the cover. One looked like a van. So maybe that's one of the new vehicles we're going to see, but still a little bit of speculation as to what these new models are going to be. The crazy thing is, they said we've got new vehicles to show you guys that are going to start production in the first half of 2025. That's very different than any vehicle Tesla's ever brought to production before, where typically they unveil it multiple years before the production start. So this, with the 1010 event and a start of production in early 2025, would be the fastest turnaround we've ever seen from unveil to production. So I'm very interested what it's going to be, and frankly, they've done an amazing job keeping it a secret. They've done such a good job of keeping it a secret that it almost feels like it's not real. But we'll find out soon, I think.
Saw we got Sawyer just popped up on stage. Sir, we've definitely gone through a few of your posts. I pinned one to the top. I thought that Liberty Walk wide body kit was superb for the Tesla Model 3, and then talked a little bit about the new factories that are going up rather fast. What do you think are some of the most important news that's been happening in the Tesla world lately?
Yeah, first of all, sorry I'm late. I had to go deal with a couple of things. Uh, the most exciting news to me is definitely that the Shanghai Megapack factory is now 45% complete just after 3 months. For those who don't know, in Tesla's current Megapack factory in Lathrop, California, that took, I believe, about 14 months from groundbreaking to, I think, pilot production, starter pilot production. So the fact that they're already 45% complete in 3 months tells me that there's a small possibility that we could get the start of pilot production by the end of December. And I think they
China
guided,
speed, baby.
yeah, it's pretty nuts. And just this one factory, they're going to spend a couple $100 million making it. Of course, there's more expenses for the equipment that goes in there and the labor and whatnot. But they're going to be able to generate upwards of $10 billion a year just from this one factory off of 10,000 units, 40 gigawatt hours of initial capacity. So, and that's going to, it's probably going to be even cheaper than the Lathrop mega packs to make just because of the lower costs of materials and batteries and LFPs directly in China. They're going to source that locally, and then they'll export those to just the Asia Pacific region, but also probably to Australia and other places too. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, I agree with Sawyer. The factory in China is probably going to be a lot lower cost than the factory in California. This means lower cost batteries. And I'm guessing this new Shanghai Megapack factory, when ramped, is going to represent more than 50% of Tesla's global Megapack volume.
Yeah, and it seems like they have more space too, just to be able to expand even further if they want to. So that 10,000 initial capacity units per year is probably low.
What about in regards to all the stuff that Elon's been doing lately? I mean, we talked a little bit about it before we got in here, Sawyer, but obviously he posted, I'd be willing to serve. Do you think, at is there any point where you get stretched too thin here?
I mean, I feel like we could have had that stretched too thin argument like 4 companies ago. Like he's running 6 or 7 now. I think for Elon, he's best served. The best position for him, I think, would be an advisory role. A cabinet position just wouldn't make any sense. There would also just be conflicts of interest with all the public stock that he owns with Tesla, especially if he's going to advise on EV policy and whatnot. But if he's just an advisor, that's fine. He did that in 2016 for Trump, but then he dropped out because Trump left the Paris Climate Accord. But it seems like things have changed quite a bit since then. So I think an advisory role makes sense.
Yeah, that'd probably be
Yeah,
the
I
simplest.
think
Yeah, Omar?
Elon, as someone else mentioned, Tesla's in kind of a good situation here because if Kamala wins, then she loves EVs. She's not going to touch the EV tax credit. She's not going to touch the IRA. That was her administration. So that obviously results in a ton of money to EV companies, battery production credits, you name it. But then if the Republicans win, Elon also has a close relationship with the administration. I believe he'd be able to steer them in directions that would possibly mitigate the damage to Tesla or even benefit Tesla. And, there are, I think, upsides of revising or repealing the IRA as well. There are a number of challenges with it. I think it would probably improve Tesla's competitive position relative to their money losing peers. And, I think generally subsidies for made in America, whatever they want to sort of structure it as, could be helpful to Tesla. Tesla does a lot of US production as well. So in a way, they've kind of neutralized the risk of the anti-EV candidate, while, the pro-EV candidate, she doesn't like Elon much, but she's probably going to create policies that are good for EVs, keep the fuel economy standards high, etc. So I think Tesla's going to be good regardless of who wins. It's really just up to the people to decide who they want to be president.
Let the people choose. Yeah, no, totally. It's a good point there. Just a minute or so left here on the space. I appreciate you making the time to jump in, Sawyer. Obviously, if anybody's in the audience, Sawyer, Omar, Penny, Landon, Meta, Shy, Kristen, just great resources for Tesla. I think Sawyer and Omar are, must follows if you want to keep in the daily Tesla news and all that type stuff. I encourage people as well to, the panelists up here, a bunch of them I'm subscribed to. They share, extra stuff. Shout out Sawyer, by the way, getting offered merch from the Empire State Building via DM. I think that's how you know you're winning, man.
That was the most random DM.
The Empire State Building. Hello, would you like? Well, they like beef with people and stuff like that, so they definitely go at it. But really excited we were able to get our Tesla space back and going this week. We will be back on next week for Tesla Talk, 12 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. I'll be doing the full day of spaces just like I am now. I'm going to take my flight back on Monday so I can be back in time to do it on Tuesday. But Omar, anything else for you on this one?
No, I would just say Tesla's giving test drives with the latest FSD. Go ahead and sign up for a test drive and try it.
Yes, I did a test drive in a Tesla, but I didn't get to test drive FSD, so I might have to go book another test drive. Penny, anything else for you?
No, man. Great space. Happy to be back with the crew. See you next week.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Sawyer, Shai, Kristen, Landon, and Meta, as well as my awesome co-hosts. You guys are all great. Encourage people to make sure that you are following these speakers that are up here. And same time next week for more Tesla talk. Gonna rotate back into some finance talk here for the next hour, specifically focused on emerging markets. As I have KII Chain up here, I know that this is a big thing for you guys, focusing on that future of finance for emerging markets. Y'all were referred over to me to actually bring on spaces by a good friend of mine. And so I am really looking forward to this one. We are going to have some other speakers that will be joining up on stage. But while we are waiting on them, let's just go ahead and get rolling because we already got the audience here. Can you guys hear me well behind the account? I know there's been some glitches today for people.
Hey, Gav. Yeah, I can hear you perfectly fine. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me, but yeah, my name's Alex, coming on here representing Keychain. So nice to be with everyone today.
Perfect. Yes. Okay. I'm glad. There was a update that they put out into the App Store today that unfortunately was affecting some people who did not download it, where they were having trouble hearing, but it sounds like we are all good to go here. So, Alex, let's kick it right off. If just from the top, I have a very familiar finance audience, right? They know finance, they know crypto. I think what you guys are doing is going to fit right into this. Can you give kind of like a high level elevator pitch overview on what you guys do?
Yeah, so we're using the blockchain, right? We are our own layer one app chain here for tokenization of real world assets, really building out financial infrastructure in emerging markets. But more so than just like, I'd say pumping different, meme coins or really deep kind of Web3 tech. We're really mainstream in our general focus within emerging markets. My background's actually in private equity, same with my co-founder, former investment banker, originally from Boston, but Colombian roots, and have been living now in Bogota in Colombia for almost 10 years. We actually did a spinoff of a fund, built a Web2 company, which did pharmaceutical drop shipping in 8 countries in LATAM. But in 2018, something really interesting happening, which was a lot of our clients started paying us just in stablecoin, in USDT, USDC, as an option for tons of cross-border payments for these patient networks that we were monitoring. But during that time, we realized the infrastructure was pretty brutal. I mean, it was great because no one else was really market making like LATAM fiat against stablecoins, so you could arbitrage 1-2%, right? Six years ago, and that's what we started doing. We first started market making, and we built an OTC desk. But then another trend really started to appear, and that's really the overwhelming appetite from individual citizens in Colombia or Argentina or really anywhere in LATAM, especially the countries that are experiencing very high inflation, to have access to just tokenized dollars, right, with like basic yield. Since then, a lot of really cool things we've been seeing, right? Tokenizing. I know we were just talking about Tesla, or a pretty good panel there, a couple, the last hour, but right, tokenizing Tesla stock. So now users can have that abroad. So it's a really strong theme that we're building on. We run the layer one blockchain, and we also run a wallet type of exchange for RWA assets at the application layer. But yeah, that's essentially how we got into working in this space and what a lot of the trends we're seeing right now locally.
Yeah, definitely the markets have been really interesting as well. Just curious, before we dive too much more into the specifics, what's your general thoughts on how crypto markets have been progressing, which of course are international markets, which fits in very well with what you guys are doing, and with watching them going and the cycle that we're in, how that factors into what you guys are doing and how you continue to build.
Yeah, I think the progression has been there. And crypto generally speaking moves in a Fourier cycle, right? So even though there's not a ton of liquidity in the market right now, that's also pretty common among TradFi markets around August, right? Like everyone's on vacation and so forth. I think we're all kind of waiting more of a strong run to happen over the next 12 months. So if history does repeat itself, we can start seeing that among in October, November. And again, a lot of I think politics will play a role. How we're looking at it, what's the Fed going to do with interest rates? If that's going to be lowered, last bull market because of COVID, they were lowered quite early. when Trump was in office. So there's a lot of like smaller factors to take into consideration, but we're generally speaking really long on the asset class. I mean, it's really been growing, astonishing. I think a lot of people don't realize, but it's growing probably about twice as fast as the internet was during this phase of its infancy, and it's really changing the way a lot of like economies work within, or local economies work within this like kind of taker model, and really allows users to communicate more efficiently, especially when the use case in emerging markets is a lot more direct. TradFi works pretty well in the US or Europe. That's not really the case in places like Colombia or Argentina.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. It's just good to hear always how people are approaching it with these ever-changing markets and how they're continuing to go. Your account, by the way, I did drop you a co-host. I'm not sure if it came through. I'll redrop it again, but you'll want to just go ahead and grab that. It should show up on your screen. If it doesn't, let me know. Okay, cool. Looks like you got it.
Just got it.
Okay, cool. Sometimes I don't know why, but I send it right away, but it just doesn't show up on people's screens. So I appreciate you letting me know there. Okay.
Yeah, it takes a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, it's classic X. All right. Well, let's talk about the essence here of any great company, which is the problems that you're solving, right? Not just creating a company for the sake of it, but finding problems and providing solutions. So, what are the specific problems here that you are solving in the region?
Yeah, so some of the first problems we were solving back in 2019 when we really got it in more actively into the space were the cross-border payment, right? Like that remittance model and then the inflation model. So to be a little bit more specific, like, when we were at the Web2 company, which was called Biosmart, importation of raw materials, exportation of final goods, that was like it's a pretty big theme in users, and TradFi is really slow and costly when it comes to kind of managing these payments. So just to give you an example, like often, not always, but often, a lot of like international transfers from clients would be caught up at the bank 2 or 3 days. Different swings like would essentially change the conversion rate by up to 1% because the peso is relatively volatile against the dollar. Some weeks, when you're trying to send transfers, total cost could be around 1.5% or more. So these are like just a lot of the like the most earliest use cases that I think blockchain was solving for, and particularly on the like individual remittance side. When you're sending $10,000, the cost might not be that bad, but when you're sending 200 or 300 or 500, the cost can be upwards of 8, 9, 10%. What blockchain is doing is completely democratizing that type of cross-border payment and really getting costs down to under 1%, right? If you want to transfer it into Colombian peso, or if you want to keep it in a wallet and spend directly from there, it's quite massive. So, what kind of emerged as this like basic kind of consumer use case has really grown into something much bigger on the import-export tokenization real-world asset side. And now like users have the advantage, right? Like whether they're small or medium-sized enterprises or individual users, creating and managing dollar-based accounts is actually really expensive because you have to go to Panama or you have to go to the US or any country, right, to that supports that. And those structures are really costly to maintain. Whereas when you start to bring this like invoice processing on the blockchain, right, all these accounts are zero fixed fees. So again, it's really playing on like the inflation model, giving users the availability to have access to dollars, right, that haven't been like continually devaluing over the past 10 years, as well as giving them a platform to really engage with these assets internationally and play suppliers.
Appreciate that answer. I see we got a hand up from Crypto Sensei. What's going on, man?
Aloha, good morning, everyone. Hey, so this is a really, unique idea. I know there's a lot of players in the space trying to achieve something very similar to what you're doing. So I'm curious to know, how much market share are you guys able to capture? And, who is your average client, right? Are these people that are just trying to, transfer money into a more stable asset? because maybe their asset in their country fluctuates a lot, and they want to just feel a little bit more comfortable in what they can save? Or are these more like in bigger institutional players that you're helping to do all of this stuff? I'd love to just kind of better understand that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think it changes depending on what market you're in, right? So like LATAM functions a little bit differently than Africa or maybe Southeast Asia, but there are definitely similarities. So for instance, in Colombia, when we see the flows, they're normally mostly like sell side USDT or USDC to be converted into peso. The main use there is like remittances or exportations, tons of suppliers. It's very similar to Mexico as well. We're seeing lots of transactions kind of come on chain and then be held within dollars, particularly if they need to be repaid to suppliers in China or elsewhere, right? So they don't have to have these like double conversions. So we're seeing like a pretty sizable demand right now in Colombia. Volumes around like 1 million a day, and just within like our B2B type clientele. And again, a lot of it is coming out, like a lot of traction that we're getting is Web 2. Some Web 3 users like OTC traders who kind of manage their own book of clients. In like Argentina and obviously in like places like Venezuela, you're seeing tons of inflows come in, right? So because inflation last December, I'm actually here in Buenos Aires right now, normally call Bogota home, but I think inflation was about 25% last December to roll off the year. I think over the year was well over 100%. But users are constantly abandoning their local currency here and coming into dollars, saving in dollars, right, in digital wallets, and then they'll have like a debit card linked to that wallet and they'll spend as they go, right? So like those are like the two big models that we're seeing right now, that cross-border type of like remittance transaction, or that onboarding, we need to buy dollars, we need to start saving in USD, USDC, get very safe but modest yield up to 5%, and really have like a safe haven for our wealth.
No, I love that, and I was just curious, since you are in, Colombia, Tom, and some of these other places that a lot of people may not understand. What has the conversations been like moving over to stable coins from actual hard currency? Is that an easy transition, an easy conversation, or is it taking more of I don't want to say more convincing, but how are people reacting to this global change into Web3 and digital assets?
Yeah, it's not necessarily like an easy conversation. I won't classify it as that, because there's definitely still a steep learning curve when it comes to like, especially on the DeFi side, when you have to like manage your own keys and all of that. But when your problems like are on a daily basis, it's a lot of motivation to learn something new, right? Whereas like the financial TradFi in like the US, it works pretty well. Like sure, we might have a transfer bounce every now and then, or like we get a little annoyed with our banks when there's a crash and they're not dispatching our wire transfers on time. But outside of like those issues, like we're really not bothered here too much. But when you're in Argentina and you're getting like nailed on inflation and you can't take out cash from banks, and you have to go and find like physical exchange stores, and like you're motivated a lot more to kind of start looking at alternative solutions. And that's what we've seen. So the adoption has been really, really steep. Like we're actually seeing a lot more places of commerce like restaurants and whatnot starting accepting stablecoin as a form of payment, which is usually a pretty big sign for user adoption, right? But yeah, so it's not easy, but it's also the necessity is there.
No, that's incredible, man. And I think, this is a huge need globally, especially in places where currencies fluctuate, really, really high, or really, I mean, it's not very stable, right? And so I think what you guys are doing is providing a good service when you say the educational part, does your team and platform have that educational area where when you meet and greet a customer and they say, oh, I have to go out and learn this stuff, and you can say, hey, here's our marketplace for learning, and you can we get access to that? Or is that something that you guys are thinking of building, or where do you send these people to learn?
Yeah, like we have our own internal resources, right? So docs page, YouTube videos, tutorials, right? Where we can really bring them on. But we're really focused on like the B2B segment side of things. When like we looked at like just remittances alone in LATAM, it's about 150 billion. I think Mexico takes down close to half of that. And then you have other territories like Colombia and Guatemala and whatnot, which, are it's pretty impressive, the volumes that are coming back via remittances. But like on the B2B side, it's more of like our BD teams can kind of walk users through how to use our platform. So there's a combination between just like general support and information you need to put out there versus like kind of holding their hand and walking them through the first couple of transactions. So yeah, we try to be like as kind of proactive or forward thinking as we can with this type of onboarding kind of customization.
I love that. And just, I'll ask one more question. I don't want to hog all the time here, but if there's somebody out in the audience, or listening to the recording that is interested in maybe getting some more information for your services, what is the best way for people to start contacting you? Is that just DMing you guys on Twitter? Is that going to your website and filling out some type of form where your team communicates? Maybe that could be really helpful for people to understand how they can get help from you guys.
Yeah, the website's always a good place, right? Like Keychain, KIIchain.io, right? Like it'll show all of the apps that we run. The biggest one is KIIX, so KIIEX.io. But we're really active in X here. We're like really active in Discord. All of our website will show all of our socials. So our team is super active there.
Great
really
questions.
Appreciate you. Yeah, I'll throw it over to Wolf. Thanks, Wolf.
Yeah, thank you.
Keychain.
Yeah,
Lady
thanks for the
Trader,
question.
Lady Trader, I see your hand up.
Hey, thank you so much. So yeah, I actually have a ton of questions that I wanted to get into. I am a key opinion leader, and my community actually invests quite a bit in early stage projects. So a lot of my questions will be kind of questions that normally my community would ask. So obviously we want to learn about the project, the tokenomics, the utilities, all of those things. But the first thing I want to start with is really, I know that you are focusing on Latin American region. A lot of people, really not a lot, but at least some people in the community always bring up a concern that whenever a project is targeting a certain region, they are sort of limiting themselves, right, to that one particular region. So how do you address that? And then also, do you actually have plans on expanding it beyond that? Or is it just, that you want to focus on one particular region for now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We're very focused on LATAM because the majority of our team are here, but we're really just like the settlement layer for emerging markets, right? So beyond the LATAM, we're very keen, like we're currently building and very keen to be kind of expanding more in Africa as well as Southeast Asia. But even though like we're focused on like the region and the use cases, it actually applies to tons of like, companies in the US and Europe who want to enter in or local assets that want to be tokenized to seek more liquidity abroad. So like our user base is actually rather international, and we have tons of attention from, different companies who are either tokenizing traditional financial products, so like ETFs or stocks or US real estate, or any type of REITs potentially, right? Any type of like dollar denominated, potentially creative or yield bearing asset can sell pretty well in like emerging markets, because a lot of these users just don't have access to it. You need to be ultra wealthy and have kind of custom like white glove broker dealer service and set up accounts in the US. And the majority of Latinos or people in emerging markets just can't afford to pay that, although they can afford to maybe throw like $100 at an ETF or Tesla stock and save in that manner as we do here locally. So yeah, tons of like platforms and companies building lend borrow protocols, right, who want to have access to maybe higher yields or yield farming within LATAM. or offer these type of better yields when you lock up your USDT or USDC. So working with them as well. So there's a lot of companies who want access to the region. They just don't know really where to get it. And then locally, I mean, tons of assets that want to be tokenized, tons of commodities, actively producing commodities projects, right? Like coffee farms who want to tokenize the coffee actually coming off of their farm, put them in an NFT. That NFT is priced in stablecoin, and then that purchase is transacted on chain, right? For the benefits that we discussed earlier. So there's right now we have over 6 billion in assets in our testnet tokenized from local projects. And a lot of them, deal with this same general issue. And sometimes they ideally want to be connected to the US or to Europe or elsewhere, but sometimes they have just buyer networks across 5 or 6 countries in LATAM, and all of those fiats are really struggling, and it's just such a financial pain to be managed within that. So yeah, we have our niche, I'd say, within the market, but we're very open to, and kind of are trying to serve more of the greater global population.
That's great. Thank you so much. The next question, which you did answer a little bit of that actually already. I want to learn a little bit more about what's going on with your layer 1 testnet. What kind of numbers you can share with us? You said 600 billion. Is that on your blockchain alone? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sorry, 6 billion. I don't know if I misspoke earlier, but over 6 billion in assets tokenized on our testnet. So yeah, we, over, I think about 150 smart contracts coming up on chain. So, we haven't released our full ecosystem yet, but, tons of projects building. It's all available to see in our Explorer, which is app.keychain.io. If you put it up, you can see all the transactions, all organic, coming up on the use. And we're just getting ready, probably in the next month or so, to really release our incentivized version of testnet, which includes an airdrop and tons of kind of on-game, kind of gamified features that users can interact with before we go into mainnet.
That's great. I was yeah, 6 billion, that definitely sounds much better. Okay, and so what about the different categories that you have? Are you able to kind of determine who are the folks who are using, what kind of projects are utilizing the chain mostly? Is that mostly RWA, or is it, other blockchains, or I'm sorry, other categories of blockchain? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so mostly it's very RWA focused, right? Because we're essentially an RWA layer app chain, and we can bridge to over 150 networks. So within this RWA module, which users can kind of tokenize through ERC or CW tokens, create a standardization from that, do any KYC, KYB on chain, approve the asset, make sure it's real. We can kind of go and do our diligence and do our KYC, KYB manually too for bigger projects. Once that gets ready, you can actually bridge through, IBC, Axelar, or others to over networks. So if someone wants to, use our chain anywhere in the world to launch and tokenize their real world asset, they can then bridge to over 150 different ecosystems, including Ethereum and some of the big monolithic ones. So again, that's really just playing on this global demand that we're the best place to tokenize a real world asset. But that's mostly what we're seeing. And then within that, there's tons of anything stablecoin powered, any lend borrow that has yield, just playing on these models that are very popular within emerging markets.
Thank you. That's great. And then the next thing I want to talk about is really something that's important always to the investors in my community. Who are your backers? Do you have any notable backers that you can share, whether it's a VC or Launchpad or anyone that you partnered with?
Yeah, we have a few funds participated in our pre-seed round. So one of our earliest investors, Sean Zubik from Super Cycle Capital, or about $150 million fund in LATAM, so of Canadian descent, but they call Panama home now. And so he kind of had that same awakening that we went through, when you actually have to walk into a bank and do paperwork still, and it's just this arduous process. But yeah, a few more backers, like since we're built with the Cosmos SDK, like Kahuna Network is a recent backer of ours, WTG Ventures, and we're in their program. So a lot of like traditional and some crypto native backers. But we're actually in our second round right now, so we're going to have some pretty good announcements sooner before later on the funding side, and also on the Launchpad and exchange side as well.
That's great. Thank you. I work with a lot of KOLs from Latin American region as well as a KOL manager. So it's always exciting to see like their perspective and how crypto is actually picking up. Like the communities are just excited about crypto, and it's just really, really, great to see that. I want to learn a little bit more about the utilities of KeyCoin. If you can share that with us, that would be great.
Yeah, so we run our own network, right? So like you'll have basic utilities regarding, staking and governance and gas and all of the basics, but really with what goes more is like within our native apps, which is KeyX, which really is the trading center. So what we've done, like the first use case really is just built, on and off ramps, giving users access to these stable coins. And then, we're now in the process of integrating more of these like RWA tokenized assets. But, another main utility is like when you have Key, the native asset within these wallets, you're going to have, zero on-ramp fees, really discounted trading fees and discounted, cash out. Whenever you have Key and you're actually, participating in holding yield-bearing assets, you're going to be capturing all of the yield as well. So, and then of course, like whenever you're tokenizing assets, they can be priced in Key. But the big ones, like outside of just standard governance, is really the ability to have access to all of these international, tokenized products, then be compensated for it.
Thank you so much. Tropic, go ahead.
Yes. Excuse me. Yeah, I was just listening to the conversation. I was thinking everything that you were saying related to LATAM is very relevant to what's happening here in the Caribbean as well. I know technically when you look at the map, we're the same region, but for whatever reason, we're always divided as the Caribbean and then Latin America, even though when we go onto a lot of sites, it pulls us up as LATAM. But remittance is a big thing here. But I like the fact that you said business to business, because even the last tweet that I put out or post was a direct response to one of the members of parliament here, which is basically saying that a company was trying to transfer $10,000 US to buy some equipment, whatever. And the spread that the bank has is so big when you go from the local currency into US dollars, and then to do international, you have to go to US dollars. But then when the fee was reversed, it actually buys back at another spread. So they lost 20% in the transaction, and just the fee going to the States and then coming back as a failed transaction, basically. And that's 20% of the original capital. And that's absolutely crazy. So there's great opportunity in countries like Trinidad, Jamaica, the Bahamas. Even though FTX was located there, you'd be surprised to know that the majority of the citizens and the people were locked out of crypto. They couldn't get on. So when you said on and off ramp, that's when my hand shot up immediately. I'd love for you to go a little bit more into those on and off ramps, because that's one of the biggest problems that we're having. Like for me, even though I'm here located in Jamaica, it's easy for me because I have links and connections in the States. But a lot of people are having a lot of trouble getting into crypto and Web3 for that simple fact. Like the on and off ramps are just not very user friendly and or accessible to the Caribbean and Latin America. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mean, on and off ramps are like the life of really, I think, tons of users coming in and out of the system. But there's a couple of different hurdles, right? And like we've studied this a lot because we're really pro P2P type marketplaces. But the issue with P2P is they don't really can facilitate a lot of B2B transactions, because they usually your on and off ramp is only as good as the liquidity that is able to be posted to that, and then the capacity for that banking info, like those rails. So a lot of like P2P type of like market making that goes down as individuals that will just say, hey, I'll cover that like $2,000 transaction or $1,000 transaction, right? And then you can kind of like naturally cross the order book, and it's quite efficient. So we try to work, we have a couple of really good P2P providers who we can like integrate in our system to kind of just help us give that spread. But you really need to like set up appropriate corporate banking rails there with like considerable volumes and understand whatever the flows are, and then have like really good KYB and KYC processes so those flows and those rails don't go down. So it's like really hard to do in places like Colombia and Argentina, right, where you have really kind of oversized flow, but we're getting a lot better at it. And we're able to really just maintain these rails to do, a few $1 million a day without really that much of an issue. But, in order to really consistently run these payments, $10,000, $20,000 a day, $30,000 a day, or anything over than like that, whatever that inflation adjusted kind of 10K mark is in the US, you need to have like really good reporting standards and create good relationships with banks. And then we integrate really all the market makers that we can, who kind of help us put up more liquidity. And then we run about, we used to run up to like almost close to $1 million of our own balance sheet of making markets in selected territories as well.
Okay, it's very interesting. Conversation that I'll probably continue off the stage, because I would just love to know what someone would need to do to set up or help to be like an on-the-ground partner with it, to like have these on and off ramps to set up. Because again, locally, that's just a huge thing. And just for example, if one store wants to get a POS system, their new cash registers or whatever, that's going to be like $10,000 US. In Jamaican dollars, that's 1.6 million if you buy from the bank. And then if there is that fee of 20%, I mean, that's a massive hit. So there's a good opportunity to work with Caribbean businesses as well with Latin America. And I would just love to know, again, I don't want to take up all the time to figure out what needs to be set up on the ground to have that happen, because B2B is definitely the way to go, as far as, there's so many quote unquote small businesses that would easily do a $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 transaction because they have to send these US dollars internationally. And if you're using the local banks, it's just not feasible to do it. So very interesting.
Yeah, we can take a look. Like, let's definitely connect after this. Normally we would just do like a study and see if our current rails could support this. And then a lot of times we just, either look to set up accounts locally, and because like, again, if you're, understanding the flows, and if we're just doing wire transfers of like, $200, $500, it can be super costly. But a lot of times, like, users will negotiate with banks. We can, take a look at, what we can actually keep in reserves there, or maintaining even like dollar accounts if they exist. And then, what we can market make against that. So it really just, depends, I guess, on like the outcomes of the study, understanding flows. But, surely there's a really good way to do it where we can lower costs, right? That's what we've done in other markets where we have presence. And it just comes down to really understanding and also having locals on the ground here who, that cultural assimilation is super important, right? But yeah, Caribbean islands, huge market. Like, I've spoken to other individuals that have came in, right, or Bermuda, they're seeing tons of flows in and out. So, really, really, long on these type of territories. Like, even our old Web 2 company, we saw the same thing. Like, a lot of like, pharmaceutical manufacturers or suppliers, right? Like drop shippers weren't really paying attention to, Guatemala or Honduras or these other regions. And, they're really just local, like, bigger than you think, really awesome, interesting markets with a huge use case and a big necessity and problems to be solved.
Great questions there, Tropic. I was wondering, Alex, if you could go a little deeper into the team behind Keychain.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a co-founder with Daniel, Daniel Arenas. So we met, like, Danny and I 15 years ago, actually, 2009, in school in Boston. Daniel grew up in Colombia and the US. We met in the athletic center. I played soccer, he played baseball, but we both worked together for Growth Capital private equity fund called Boston Bogota Capital Management. Daniel also moved back to Colombia, to Bogota after school, and did investment banking for a bank called Dinamo Consultores. So we did tons of transactions in energy and health tech, and a little bit of biotech. But we ended up in 2014, 2015 doing a spinoff of one of the funds. That was a company called BioSmart. So we essentially we tried shopping around this one technology and kind of looking, like doing an off the fund deal with LPs, but nobody really wanted to buy the technology, so we did, and we started it ourselves. In our more naive years, when we wanted to just kind of take a chance. So I moved down to Bogota full time with Daniel. We grew BioSmart together into eight countries. We manufactured 11 SKUs. So the lab, we had a fully GMP approved lab in Bogota and distributed those products. And then we did a roll up. We acquired some pharmaceutical drop shippers and grew that operation into 8 countries. So some of our biggest clients were like Boomi and like Maxen and some really big global insurance providers. And then that's when we started to really, we had been following just digital assets early on, but that's when we really started to build more actively when our, consumers, started paying us. But apart from us, really great team. We're working on, some of our developers come from like Layer Zero and Zeta Chain. One of our founding devs was the head dev at Bluezell blockchain that launched early on in 2019. Then we have really awesome marketing and just full stack team, 3 full stack devs in the Philippines and the rest in LATAM. So yeah, really about 20 of us right now, team size, and having a lot of fun working every day.
That's awesome. Sounds like a winning combination there with the people that you've put together. One of the things that I know Lady Trader and Sensei, myself, and others focus on is growth of a community, right? Ensuring consistent growth within the community. It's so important not to just, adopt others' communities, but to continue to bolster your own. What's your plans there for engaging the community, building it, keeping them engaged over time as you roll out products, as you roll out new features, right? How do you build that internally versus just relying on other people's communities?
Yeah, we're focused really on building out products because of the community, not kind of like vice versa, right? So we're actually really encourage our community to be really interactive with what they need. We throw lots of smaller events locally. So instead of just sponsoring all these huge events like Token and Consensus or whatnot, we're actually really more keen to be throwing local meetup events in each market. We just did one last week here in Buenos Aires, about 100 people. We did one a couple weeks ago in Medellin, about 250 people, where we just, we have some educational panels and all of that, but we really just bring in our entire team, our devs to our trading team, to, me and Daniel are always there. And, we just want to learn more about, a lot of what locals want to build, what they think will work, what they're doing now, understanding that, so we can actually build more, have a focus on what's real. But outside of that, we're of course getting ready for fun stuff. So one thing we're doing right now is we're running a hackathon for the next 4 weeks. We launched it about 4 weeks ago on Dora Hacks. So big hackathon, 3 different tracks, about $115,000 in prize pools, between stablecoin and local and native token. And we're getting ready for just really launching the next big thing, which is incentivized testnet. So we're running it right now, our testnet that's open. So anyone can kind of come on and start using our products on chain and start building. But we're going to, put in a series of airdrops that will continue through mainnet to help further and strengthen our community. But yeah, it's, we're come follow us on Twitter or start chatting in Discord. We definitely want to hear from you and get to know you and get to know what you're up to.
Thank you. Yeah, Lady Trader?
Hey, thank you. So I have a couple of other follow-up questions, and these are about your launch strategy. So you guys have already done some fundraising. Can you tell us a little bit about the FDV that you have raised funds with, and then also the current rounds, and what's the valuation on that?
Yeah, so FTV, we self-funded to get started. We did it FTV at 90 million, and that's our rounds right now. And then, launch plans looking, ideally to going mainnet in September, October, depending on the market, and then getting a launch out by the end of the year. So we're still pretty confident that, past bull markets will be, won't deviate too far from the mean when it comes to this one. So that's really the plan right now.
Thank you. So for the FTV, obviously this is a blockchain as well that we're talking about here, but a lot of people have concerns about the high FTV, right? A lot of investors are looking for opportunities that are like under 50 M in value. Do you have anything that you can add to address that concern?
Well, our rounds were done with equity and with token, right? So you're getting like equity into the holding, which runs all of our assets, and that those assets are cash flow producing, and we have current mainnet volume. So there is a little bit more value there. Also, like with RFDV, a lot of projects might like sell. If you look at some of the bigger ones, even they sell off 20 to 40% to pre-sale, in their total supply to investors. And like, I think that actually hasn't worked recently because you just get so much downside pressure. And the same for like, large public token sales. I think we saw a couple off CoinList that raised, 10, 20 million. And again, you get this like really intensive downside pressure. Whereas like a lot of our investors backing us right now are really thinking over the next like 8 years of us really like securing our target market, our use case. Really no one else is focusing on what we're focusing on, and thinking on like the longevity of the project. So like in our pre-sale, we only sold about 3% of total supply. And in this round, it's going to be like max supply being sold is only up to 10%. So there's going to be like really low down sell side pressure when we get to the market. And we're only bringing on, a certain amount of validators. We're controlling our inflation. So it's really like organically positioned to do quite well over the next, 1 to 8 years.
And then when are you planning on launch the token?
The goal is by the end of the year. So that's when we're planning, right? Like we were investors in tons of big projects in the 2020 cycle. And we saw the ones that kind of got out and had good terms. And we're able to kind of unwind their position. So instead of like really long lockups, like 12 months or 18 months, where you just have this like, and then you have 100% unlock, right? We have like in the public sale, there won't be a lockup at all. There will be no cliff, and then the release is usually daily put into a smart contract, right? Those rewards get released, over the course of 12 months or so. So that's what the terms are looking like right now. And it's just a much more responsible way to like go to market.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And then what about like where you will be launching? Is that going to be a DEX only? Are you working with any major centralized exchanges? Anything that you can share, any alpha there?
Yeah, working with major centralized exchanges. So we're in conversations with them now, but hopefully have some juicy news in the next 60 days for you.
That's amazing. And what about launchpads? Like, have you secured any major launchpads yet?
We've secured a couple, yeah. So we're constantly talking. Our general philosophy is like, again, not doing some massive, huge raise, because a lot of times those users just want to like dump right away. But rather working with 2 to 3, doing much more responsible, smaller raises, and really getting more of a community built, rather than just like bringing funds in the door.
That's amazing. And you guys have been in the markets for a while, so you have seen also what happened like during the bear markets and everything. How did you kind of keep up with making sure that you're developing and delivering your product, right? And not let the whole market situation impact you in any way? And also any lessons that you can share with us from the bear markets?
Yeah, I'd say, when we go into bull markets right now, you see these trends, right? Like RWA, DePIN, you see AI. These are all like super sexy trends, right? I'd say like when bear markets come, it's not about being sexy, it's about being real, And so like you have to think like that even through bull markets. And so like while everyone wasn't investing in like, right now they're, oh, we don't want to do payment apps or we don't want to do trading apps. It's like, these are still some of the biggest use cases. And if you're like solving problems at the core, not just trying to like pump a, Trump or Biden meme coin, like we've been, and I love meme coins and everything. They're all fun, but it's like when you're actually really trying to solve real problems and build, our trading business is what kept us alive through the bear market. We were growing, all their projects were suffering because, everyone was just not really focused on like, oh, what's new, what's going to emerge. Let's place bets on what's trending. Rather, let's like focus on, what's real, and let's use Tether and let's implement these technologies for cross-border stuff or this or that. So, we did quite well during this last bear market when we were really, and we took the opportunity to just, fly more under the weather and radar and build. So, that's like my biggest thing is, you can't think like, even though you need to be present about what's happening now and over the next 12 months and what will happen during this next bull run if it does come, you need to really be thinking like sustainable growth over the next 8 to 12 years.
That's phenomenal. What about like whenever we have L1s that are partnering with projects with grants and grants funding and then also co-marketing and all of those things, it usually does drive a lot of user adoption, right? Do you have anything like that, any grant programs or anything for projects that are willing to build on Keychain?
Yeah, we do. We have tons of grant programs. So it's like almost like an incubator in a way. But yeah, like financial support through token allocation, as well as tons of time with dev support or strategy support, fundraising support, intros, all of that good stuff. And then mainly just like more than just like that, because you can find that in a lot of places, but really understanding like market support here locally. So if like you are tokenizing financial products and you want to distribute that in LATAM, really actually helping your business work locally, rather than just like oh yeah, I'll introduce you to like a couple of VCs, right?
That's phenomenal. Those are all the questions I had for today. You guys have a great project. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it because we are pretty heavily diversified in my community. We love AI, we love gaming, we love all of the good projects, and of course L1s and projects that are building in certain regions. If we can see an opportunity there, that's always a plus. So thank you so much for all the great answers.
No, thank you. Some great questions. So looking forward to continue chatting and just watch us grow and continue to move forward over these next months.
Really good question and answer there from Lady Trader as well as Alex. We are going to run for a little bit over 10 more minutes. If you're in the audience and you have any questions, you can feel free to shoot them over directly to my DMs. My DMs are wide open, and I'm happy to take them and integrate them into the conversation here. Of course, as you're going through, I'll make sure you're following the speakers on stage. If you go into Keychain's profile, you'll see a lot more information that will help to fill out any pieces that you're missing here. I did just pin a couple of things also to the top of the space. They should show up there relatively shortly for more people to kind of see some of the behind the scenes of what's happening with Keychain and other items along those lines. Another question just coming from my end is around challenges. We've talked about a lot of the plans and the things that you'll be working on. I'm curious, what do you think the biggest challenges are going to be that you expect to face as you continue to build out here, how you plan to overcome them?
Yeah, a lot of our the main challenges that we're focused on are just local big kind of B2B partnerships, right? Kind of how we can operate among 5, 6, 7 different countries, and then each like kind of set of specific pain points might change a little bit, right? So understanding how we can just like adjust the business to really like address maybe that localized market, and then create community within that local market. So it's like that's like one thing that we spend a lot of time, I think, thinking about. The good news is that like at the core, the problems are kind of just like the same, whether it's inflation or cross-border or B2B or remittance. It's just like the operatives within or the specifics within each country can change a little bit, right? So we're thinking about it a lot in that sense, and then just making sure that like what we're doing to the user. So like blockchain obviously is something very new, but what we're actually building can be understood very very easily, right? So like, this is kind of what we're solving. We're using blockchain to solve it, and it's here to stay, right? Because it's like addressing a real need. And so, that's what like a lot of our time gets taken into consideration with, and just like, again, like, because TradFi is so expensive, and this is something like Tropic was talking about in Jamaica, right? Like, it's really difficult there, and it's also highly centralized. It's the same thing in Colombia. There's like, with, when you control these FX rates, right? It's controlled through one counterparty. They're giving you the FX rate from the day before. It's like you can't really build on top of that. That's not something you can innovate, right? Like just through TradFi. Like when you can't do that with just like a fintech app. Like you really do need, distributed ledger technology. You need blockchain to really start innovating at the core and really be a part of like a different financial market. So we're constantly just looking at just like how we can just integrate more into society, and just constantly looking at consumer trends.
What do you think is the best way to analyze consumer trends? What type of data are you looking at there?
We're looking at exactly like, on the purchasing side, right? So consumer purchasing, we're looking at like what users are doing with their money, with financial flows. So we're seeing like what apps, are they really using within TradFi, what the migration's been. Like another issue that we're kind of identifying is that a lot of the great fintech apps that come out in places like Colombia, right, that are very like Venmo or like Zelle type related, zero fixed cost transfers. They do a pretty good job like rolling up consumers quickly. And then, they'll either most likely get acquired by a bank, in which case when that like larger financial institution acquires them, they'll start charging those fixed costs again, and you kind of see them scatter. So like, we're looking at just, what type of, flows are happening, right? What apps they're using, and and really just like trying to predict kind of what happens next. So that's really why we're in the RWA space, because we just saw such like a sharp uptick in usage on chain. We looked at transactional volumes happening. We looked at the amount of wallets populating in Colombia. We looked at the type of flows. It's about 2 billion a month right now, and on-chain flows within Colombia by itself. And we look just at the appetite for businesses and for users. So when we see like, the biggest bank in Colombia launching their own like centralized exchange app, right? You're starting to see that there's more appetite, and users now are kind of looking at Bitcoin, they're looking at Ethereum, they're looking at these assets in a different way.
Certainly people and the way that they're viewing these things has been rapidly changing. And so it sounds like you're looking at some good data sets to get through that. We got Kayla up on stage. Kayla, you're probably still in catch-up mode here. I know you had a meeting running along there, jumping in, but I appreciate you joining up. And if at any point you do have any thoughts or questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll come right over to you. We've been having some really good ones here from Lady Trader and Sensei. And just like I knew she would, hands already up. What's going on, Kayla?
Yeah, no, I for one love that you guys are focusing on a different region. It's nice to see like that there's more of a global initiative here. I think that the mistake a lot of teams make is they think because you can, market and get maybe investors in the US market, that that's where you'll get the most adoption. So I'm really curious if you think like if being international is a play on for adoption, and if you think that, it's easier to get adoption overseas, because I have heard that from projects that work overseas that it's people are looking for these tools overseas, so they're more likely to adopt them. I'm curious if you have seen that with your project so far.
Yeah, we have, I mean, like, I think at the core, if like the bigger, more painful problems you can solve, the better your adoption is going to be, right? And like, I think it just for users down here, it's just way more real. I'm currently in Buenos Aires in Argentina right now. I was here visiting for an event last November, so like a coffee last November was about like 1,000 pesos. It's at about 5,000 pesos right now. So we've had crazy inflation. So, when I was just out to lunch with just like an event planner, just, that we used last time we were here for a local event, just kind of catching up on things. And he told me inflation, and I was doing research, was like 25% 1 month. So when you like when these are your problems, you're able to like, you're much more motivated to adopt to new technologies and new solutions rather quickly. So it's really just like finding the markets that are struggling the most, and that have the largest, most painful problems, and then trying to adapt for them. And because we're here locally, and our team is too, we can do it a lot better than I think others trying to kind of enter in without understanding like cultural significance.
Yeah, and just side note, Cardano has like a huge initiative where that's like, when I was working with them in like 2022, that was their main thing, was like global adoption, building tech overseas, specifically in South America. So like really well positioned in my opinion, and that leads me to my other question, which is what markets are you breaking into? Like where are the underserved markets that we should be looking into?
Yeah, so like we have a particular focus on Latin America, even though amazing things are happening in Africa right now, and we're like working with teams and running partnerships for those markets. But locally, I mean, like Argentina, Venezuela, fantastic markets for blockchain. I mean, Venezuela has essentially abandoned their local currency years ago, and really the economy is like essentially dollarized now. A lot of like the movements go between like Zelle networks and then or Zelle and Venmo type apps in the US, believe it or not. And, when we were working on our Web2 company, we saw that since 2017, 2018, right? The majority of like those patient networks in Venezuela were actually paying us through US bank accounts, or via, on chain with crypto. So we're seeing like, when these like local big companies, packaging companies are selling in places like Venezuela, that cash or cash-based transactions locally there, either whether it's USD cash based in the market or it's local currency, are being wrapped up into stablecoin and then taken across. Inflation. So in Argentina and Venezuela, you're seeing really big inflation model, tons of on ramp. In Colombia, Mexico, other countries, you're seeing more off ramp from exports and from remittances. So like that cross-border type payment apps are well, but all across the board, like you see the use cases there, right? You see appetite for like, hey, we want to own stocks, we want to own, typical financial products, right? Tokenization, real world assets is just the means, it's just the delivery mechanism for these users to have access to those products. So like that's essentially what like some of the bigger trends we're seeing and like just the general user base, right?
Yeah, I think it's smart. Like I think the mistake people make, and it's okay to do this, but is kind of acting like they are for everybody. The people who grow the fastest, they find who they're for, they double down there, they test the market there, and then they bring it to new markets. So this is really smart.
Yeah, and that's just being highly focused on your cause and your market. I agree. I mean, we've seen other great like companies here, other local smaller exchanges or wallets that have rolled up, millions of users, and they do hundreds of millions a month in volume because they've kind of identified who they're for and what they serve, and they're able to just understand the culture behind it.
Really good questions there, Kayla. Appreciate you jumping in with us. We just have a couple of minutes here left. Alex, is there anything that we haven't touched on or any calls to action that you'd like to put out here in the space while we have a few minutes?
No, for me, I mean, really here to just answer questions and kind of just let everyone know what we're building, right? Like, we have a big hackathon at dorahacks.io. You can go over there, and if you're a dev, if you're a builder, feel free to reach out to us on Discord and build something cool. $115,000 in rewards. We have open testnet going on, version 2 right now. We're going to be rolling out some really strong incentivization programs in the next couple of months, but in the next couple of weeks rather. But yeah, just we're here just to kind of let the users know what we're building. The use case, the community is real in LATAM, and if anyone else is building anything interesting and they have anything interesting and they have something really cool and they would like to kind of enter into LATAM, we're always here to help and help you in any way we can.
Sorry, I was muted there. Really, really good stuff. I do encourage everybody again to follow all the speakers up here. Make sure you're checking out the Keychain account as well. Lady Trader Sensei, you guys had a lot of great thoughts on this, as well as Tropic and Kayla. Thank you, A, for supporting. Lady Trader, it sounds like you're really passionate on this. Did you have any final thoughts here?
Well, I mean, I'm excited. Every time you see an L1, I mean, it's always exciting, and I'm really happy to support you guys as well. So I'll be keeping an eye on it, and also we'll be checking out the community, testnet, all of that. And all the best for your launch this year.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to staying in touch, and thanks again for all the great questions.
Awesome. Sensei, anything else for you?
No, I just really appreciate it. This is a really intriguing, and I think it's going to help out a lot of people that are suffering around the world, that are holding currencies that are just depreciating, and people are losing all of their wealth. And so, to having these types of on and off ramps and being able to do all this, I think it's a very powerful movement. And so, I really appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you for having me and answering my questions.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions. It was great getting to know everyone here and having a good, nice chat.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesdays. Looking forward to the next chat together with all of y'all. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.